Film is a disease, Frank Capra said. When it infects your bloodstream, it takes over as the number one hormone. It plays Iago to your psyche. As with heroin, the antidote to film is more film.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Sailor at Heart podcast. The podcast is two films brought together by one topic or theme with trivia to go with it, and there will be spoilers in this episode, so be warned, because we're talking Duel and A Clockwork Orange. So today's episode, of course, is the year was 1971, and like I said, Duel and Clockwork Orange. My birthday was on the 26th. And so I thought, what better way to do an episode than to do 1971 movies? But there are 3,644 movies that came out in 1971. And I was like, that is insane. Fuck that noise. So I dwindled it down, and I thought I was trying to find some hard-to-find, interesting movies, kind of to go with the Tarantino-type episode that I did last time. And then I thought, nah, let's just do some main films. So I looked up main films, and I found Hanny Calder, and I found Dirty Harry, and I found French Connection. And I was like, oh, these are all great, but I kind of want something that I either haven't seen for a while or something interesting. And so here's a shout out, of course, if he doesn't get enough love from this show, Joe Merle from Those Movie Guys podcast. I wrote him and I said, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Maybe I'll put these two together, maybe these other two. And all of a sudden, he said, oh, I think Duel and A Clockwork Orange would be great. And I said, you know what? You've been nice to me over the years or year, or whatever, however long we've known each other. You've been nice to me. You send me things and whatnot. Sorry, Jason Bromley, but he does. And so I said, that's cool. I will, I'm going to do that for you because you said that. I'm always taking recommendations, so I'll do that for you. So we're doing Duel and A Clockwork Orange today. And some corrections from the last show. There aren't any because, I made all my notes and pretty much got everything. Something that I did forget was Quentin Tarantino did a movie like in 1987 of him and his friends, and it was called My Best Friend's Birthday. And you can find that on YouTube. And for a long time, I couldn't find it. I thought it was like the Amblin movie that Spielberg's doing or did back in the day, but never released and never did anything with it, never got finished, whatever. So I was like, oh man, that'd be cool if I could find it. And then I found it and I watched it, and it was okay. And there's pieces where you can see where he took that out and put in True Romance or whatever, mostly True Romance stuff and his love of Elvis. So it's pretty cool. But anyway, if there is anything that I miss on this show or whatever, you want to let me know, or send me some recommendations of some movies you want me to talk about, you can send any questions or comments or hate mail or whatever to me at mysailorheart@gmail.com. That's mysailorheart@gmail.com. So here are, I put out comments. So here's some a comment from Instagram page where I asked, is A Clockwork Orange a joyride of a film or is it a torture to watch? Because I mentioned Jason Bromley from Talking Poop podcast. I had asked him, I said, have you ever seen Clockwork Orange? And he said, yeah, but it's it's not a classic. It's boring, whatever. And I was like, okay. And he wouldn't watch it again. And so I'm like, okay. So I watch it, and it is really, as you know, with Kubrick, or as, more people on the things I was watching call him Kubrick. But I always call him Kubrick, so for here it's going to be Kubrick. I cannot change my mind to say Kubrick, so it'll be Kubrick. But anyway, Will Driscoll wrote, I really enjoyed it, saw it for the first time a few months ago, and thought it certainly held up to the praises it gets. And it's like an art film. That's what Kubrick, like 2001 you watch, you may not understand it, but it's a beautiful fucking movie. This one is like, it's about free will and all that. We'll get to that later, but it's like an art piece almost, and makes you think. It's really cool. So it's really neat. But what else? Sorry, my dogs were barking and they threw me off for a second. All right, sorry about that. Just had to pause for a second. So, all right, now on to newest movies that I've watched at home or in the theater. First of all, thank you, Will, for writing on my Instagram when nobody else did. And also, I'm still trying to figure out where to put the movie thing in. I was thinking between the two films, but like I said, two people that I've talked to say that they like when I read this. Two other people say that it's kind of long and boring and whatever. But anyway, I'm going to get to it right now. Newest movies I've watched at home or in the theater are, the other day, my wife and I are talking, and I said Desperate Measures. We were talking about Desperate Measures. We were talking about Michael Keaton. And I said, have you ever seen Desperate Measures from 1997? She said, no. I said, he plays a bad guy. It's pretty cool. I remember it being pretty cool. So we put that on. It's on Amazon Prime. It's for free, either there or Netflix, wherever we got it. And it's pretty cool. It doesn't hold up as well because it's a 90s movie, and it's the story is outrageous, where the story is that this cop, his son is sick and needs a bone marrow transplant. And the only match is this killer that Andy Garcia knows, which is Michael Keaton. And so he asked Michael Keaton to give him the bone marrow. And he finally signs off on it, but of course rigs everything so he can escape. And all this stuff, all this craziness where you're like, he'd be dead already. Like, just kill him. And Andy Garcia's like, don't kill him because he needs a bone marrow just for his son. It's like, come on. Then, of course, after that, we're in this Michael Keaton mood, so we watched Beetlejuice from 1988. Of course, you all know that. I recently shared a video on Instagram of I bought a handbook for the recently deceased. It's like a blank journal, but it'll be cool to set out here in the podcast studio and just go, hey, that's from a movie. Then I saw The Hitch-Hiker from 1953 on Criterion Channel, and that was really good. I really liked it. I've talked about these film noirs that I love. This is one of my top 10. It was really cool. And it's more of this killer who escapes, and he ends up getting with these other two guys who are being chased by the police as well. So it's kind of cool where it's like they're on the run and he's on the run and he doesn't know that they're on the run. Anyway, it's real cool and it's based on a true story. Then I saw Driving Force from 1990. Now, everybody check this movie out, but nobody will, and nobody probably should, except for Joe Merle. It's called Driving Force. Patrick Swayze's brother is in it. And Flash Gordon from Flash Gordon in 1980 is in it. And Sam Jones. And it is really like crazy. It's like in the near future, supposedly from 1990, but in the near future. And it's these tow truck drivers that make people wreck and get in wrecks so they can get their business, so they can tow more cars and make their business run. And they're just psycho crazy guys. And Sam Jones is like the hero. And it's got Catherine Bach in it from Dukes of Hazzard, and she looks good in it. So it's pretty cool. And she's a damsel in distress, or whatever you call it. Anyway, she's trying to help. And then Sam Jones has a daughter, and they try to do this whole thing. Anyway, it's fun. It's on Amazon Prime. And then I saw Hollywood Uncensored. It was a documentary from 1987. It was about the pre-code, the Hays Code, like all that stuff coming in. And then things got censored, and then Easy Rider and all these other movies that came out, which, by the way, the movies we're talking about today, A Clockwork Orange, that and Midnight Cowboy are the only two ever Oscar-nominated films that were rated X. So, pretty interesting. Then me and the wife rented Missing Link from 2019, and that's that animated thing. It was pretty fun. It was funny. We liked it, but it was just like, you know, a throwaway thing. Like, I can't believe they spend so much money on doing this animation, and then these movies just kind of, like, they're done in the theater, and then they go to DVD, and maybe they make money, but I don't know. Then we saw the ABC Murders, which is on Amazon Prime. It's like an original. It's got, can't think of his name, but it's like a series. There's like, I forget, 3 or 6 of them, and he's solving this crime. It's kind of like he's a retired detective that's really good, And he's Poirot. He plays, Inspector Poirot, like from, Murder on the Orient Express. So it's really cool. And that was from 2018, and it was good. And then we went to the theater and saw Good Boys from 2019. And that was good. It was fun. It was funny, and it made me laugh out loud, but it was nowhere near. I know everybody's comparing it to Superbad, but it's not like Superbad. It's different because they're younger, so it's still cool, but it was good. But I don't know. It was good. It was fine. But wait for it on DVD. That'll be fine. Then when I was trying to think of what movies from 1971 to do, one of the movies on there was Get Carter with Michael Caine. And I watched that, and, they made the remake with Stallone. Get Carter from 1971 is really cool and gritty and has this ending that's, like, different that you don't usually get because it's a British film, so it's really interesting. That's on Amazon Prime or Netflix, wherever. You'll find it, and it's really good. Jerry Seinfeld, I'm telling you for the last time, from 1998, starts with, like, they're putting all of his jokes in a they're going to bury it like a funeral. And then he gets on stage and does supposed to be his last stand-up comedy special after his show ended. But he didn't quit, of course. But it was okay. It had his old jokes in it. My wife was like, haven't we seen this? I said, I think we've seen some of his old jokes from the other things that we watched. So if you haven't seen his comedy, though, it's pretty good to watch. Then I saw from Criterion Channel again, On Dangerous Ground from 1951, and that was cool. That was a good one. I can't really think of what it was about right now that I think about it. I think I know, but I want to get to the better one that's coming up. But anyway, The Bigamist then I saw but On Dangerous Ground is good. The Bigamist from 1953 is really cool. It was, this guy of course, he's a bigamist. He's married to this one girl. Then they go to adopt this other woman. He goes with her to adopt a baby. And it turns out that the guy goes, well, I'm going to run all this background check on you. And the guy drives to where he lives in L.A. and finds that the guy has another family and a baby. So then he's like, what happened? And the guy explains to him everything of what happened. So it's kind of funny where you're supposed to feel for him, but you don't. And neither does the guy. The guy that's trying to adopt the baby to him is like, no, like, I don't feel for you. Like, you did bad things. You had a choice. Then I saw Clockwork Orange from 1971, speaking of free choice. And that was really good, and I'll get to that. Then I saw on Criterion, I love these gritty crime movies that are, like, really cool, and especially, like, the Japanese or Chinese, like, all these cool movies. And this one was called Golden Eyes, or a.k.a. Booted Babe, Busted Boss, from 1968. It's in Japanese, so you got to read it. Sorry, Jason Bromley, you're out, because it's black and white also, I believe. Maybe not black and white. No, it was color. You're still out because it's Japanese. But Joe Merle, check that out, or anybody else. It's really cool, and they got this funny thing of, like, this, like, machine gun fight. Anyway, it's really cool. It's like a spy type of thing. It's pretty cool. Then here is the good film noir that I saw, which was T-Men from 1947. And I had seen this before, but it is really good. It's basically they're looking for counterfeiters, and they go undercover, these two FBI agents. It's really neat. The way that it kind of slowly builds of them learning everything and learning their back history and all this stuff. So it's really cool. And that's on Criterion, but you might find it other places, called T-Men. T-Men. Then I saw Duel from 1971, of course, to be prepared for this show here. Then I saw The Wicker Man from 1973, which I'd never seen, and it had Edward Woodward in it, who was the original Equalizer, and it was really cool. I liked it better than I thought. I had heard so much horrible things about it, but it was actually fun, and it was kind of a beautiful movie. It was kind of cool. Had some singing in it, which was weird. My wife was like, I think this might be a musical. And I said, I don't think so. So Josh thinks it is, from Germany, and I say, no, it is not. And I let him know that, but he still disagrees. Then I'm going to be playing you a trailer, a radio spot for a movie called The Corpse Grinders, which came out in 1971. And I had wanted to see this. I heard about it on my Amazon. I saw it there, and I don't know if Quentin Tarantino played it in July for his 60s and 70s thing, but at the New Beverly. But I went ahead and I watched it, and it's like a cheap independent film, but it's funny because they're killing people. They're running out of money, so they can't afford the meat to make the cat food. So these two guys kill people, grind them up, put them in cans of cat food, feed them to the cats. The cats are eating the food, then getting a taste for flesh and attacking their owners. And their idea for that is tigers, the guy reads even in a book, one of the doctors, well, it says here, tigers don't have a taste for flesh until they have nothing else to eat. Then they attack a human. Then they always have a taste for flesh. So that's their thing for that. So it's kind of funny. So check that out if you like a cheap little movie. But it's only like an hour and 15 minutes. So not much time. But for people who don't have time, then don't watch it. But people who have a little bit of time, go ahead and check it out. It's fun. Then Hyperdrive from 2019 on Netflix. So this was one where it's like a car thing, like a car competition, and they race cars, and they have to like do drifting, and they have to go through these courses and do it a certain way and get the top times. So it's like American Ninja Warrior, but with cars. And I found it at first, I was like, let's watch this, honey. Let's watch the first episode. All of a sudden I was hooked, and I end up watching like 6 of them. So there's, I think, 10 of them. I am going to finish them, but the courses get harder and harder as they go. And it's pretty cool. So anybody who's into cars or into that, it's kind of neat because it also shows how the driver, there's a guy on there that's really good. He's like 21 years old. His name's Babyface Assassin. He's kills it. He's fucking awesome. And all the other drivers are like, he's really good. Then the wife and I last night went and saw Ready or Not from 2019. That was cool. It was fun. It was a different movie. Robert Jones from Vegas, he's been on this show with me. We did the Edgar Wright episode. He said he didn't like it, but me and the wife went and saw it, and we liked it. It was different. It was cool. It was fun. It was really neat. But could you wait for rental? Yeah, you can. Should you see it in the theater? Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, whatever. We have the AMC A-list Stubbs member, so we do that. But anyway, then I finished Mindhunter Season 2, me and the wife, and that was good. And I'm also listening to a podcast about the Atlanta child murders, so that's pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting. It's not cool. 28 children died. And then I just got done watching It from 2017 with me and the wife watched it, and it was really cool, and I love it. So we bought it on Blu-ray and digital and all that, so I have that. So, and then of course the new one's coming out, so we want to see that. So that is awesome. Now, on to the show here. The year is 1971, and they opened the first Starbucks, and Walt Disney World opens in Florida. And now I'm going to play you the Corpse Grinders trailer.
A new dimension in shock, like spending a night in the grave. 3 of the most macabre experiences ever put on film. Witness the bone-crushing terror in The Corpse Grinders. Plus, sinister and terrifying, The Undertaker and his pals. Fiendish and petrifying, The Embalmer. Due to the highly intense and sinister nature of this program, the producers insist that every person in attendance personally sign a certificate of assurance before being admitted into the theater, certifying each patron of sound mind and body, and that in the event of a coronary insanity or death suffered due to the program, the producers or theater cannot be held liable in any way. Certificates will be handed out for your signing prior to ticket purchase at the box office by special uniformed attendants. A nurse is in attendance at the theater, providing free blood pressure tests to anyone requesting such. The Corpse Grinders! Undertaker and his pals, and the Embalmer, the shock of your life.
A nurse will be in attendance. How cool is that? Like, I wonder if they had like women dressed like just workers there that just dressed as nurses, or were like, yeah, I'm a nurse, or what. But I love those old trailers. Like that was a radio spot too, where you're like, oh my god, this is creepy, and then you go see it, and you're like, because it was a horror movie from 1971, which wasn't as good until you get to the 80s is when horror gets awesome. So, okay, let's get to this now. But what else came out in 1971 was a TV movie called Duel. And the plot of that is a business commuter is pursued and terrorized by the malevolent driver of a massive tractor trailer. And it stars Dennis Weaver as David Mann. There's other people in it, but I only use Dennis Weaver because nobody else knows any of the other people. It was written by Richard Matheson from his novelette of the same name, and directed by, of course, Steven Spielberg. So then this movie did so well that they said, can we add some time to it, add like 20 minutes or a little less, so we can send it overseas and play in Europe for, it's got to be 90 minutes. So it was normally 70 minutes or something. So they had to add some time onto it. So he did, and they put it out, and it did great. And Spielberg was already doing TV movies. He was doing like not TV movies, but Columbo, like an hour-long show. So he did Columbo. He did, it was called Murder by the Book. And he did that, and it was, that was really good. And that was one of his little, like, somebody said, do you have something we could see? And he was like, yeah, I got this. So he showed him that. But now I have this laid out for the whole movie, like the way this goes. So I'm going to kind of go through it quickly just to tell you everything of what I liked. But okay, here we go. Added for the theatrical release is him leaving the house. So it's just a car backing up and driving, like just there's a camera mounted on the car, and he's driving through the city. Then it goes from the city to the desert, and you're like, oh, and there's like no cars now, and it's just him by himself. And it's 5.5 minutes in, and he gets behind the truck. So without that added stuff, like the TV movie got right into it. And he gets behind the truck, he passes leisurely, and then the truck passes him kind of aggressively and fast. Then he passes again. The truck gives a long honk of the horn at him. Then he pulls into the gas station, the truck pulls in as well. So now I was like, you're like, I had seen it several times, I've seen it. But you're like, oh my God, are they going to have words? If this was 2019, they'd, hey, what the fuck, man? Why you got to go past me? Whatever. But still, it was a little innocent. So truck pulls in to the gas station as well. And there's like 6 different license plates on the front of this truck. And they're all from like maybe his other victims, but you'll find out later. Yeah. Spoiler. And then he makes a phone call to his wife. That was another added thing for the theatrical version to make it last a little longer. And you can see that he's the everyman. He's kind of a little nebbish, kind of, just kind of weak with his wife. Not that he should be yelling at her, but, he's just kind of, he's just, okay, it is what it is, whatever. God, I hate that words. But anyway. He then leaves after getting gas, and of course the attendant tries to tell him, hey, your radiator hose needs replaced, and he's like, yeah, right, it's an upsell. Yeah, everybody tells me that, whatever. And so when he leaves, the truck and the driver are being helped next, and David Mann drives on down the road, and the diesel catches up to him, then passes after David motions to him to pass, but the diesel slows down. David tries to pass, and the diesel won't let him pass. Then the truck motions for David to pass, but then someone almost hits him head on. David finally passes and is extremely happy with himself. Like, he's like, oh, I did it. I showed him. I got it. Because he took, like, this road up and around and comes down, and he did most of his own driving, unless it was real dangerous stuff. And then the diesel coming up quick is so ominous, and the chase begins. And one of my favorite scenes is just a small part, and it's the truck coming around a small turn and accelerating right at the camera. It's a very cool shot. And that might have been where, and Spielberg said, and I believe Spielberg, he would tell you if, like, yeah, he says later, I'll get to in the facts where, like, I cheated right here. But he said people say, like, oh, you cranked up the speed. And he's like, no, the camera actually happened to crank itself up right about then and made it a little faster. He said, I didn't do that. And that was a really cool shot. It's like, so I don't know if that's the scene he's talking about, but the diesel comes around this corner, and is following him. just this curve, and then all of a sudden like speeds up like right away, like almost like right behind him, and you're like, oh shit. It's just awesome. And then David quickly pulls off the road, and the diesel keeps going down the road. And now for one of the best scenes that I love is, so David, like, he crashes into this fence, and he breaks the fence. His car's okay, but he gets out, and this old man's like, hey man, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. He goes, yeah, this crazy guy, he's trying to kill me. And they're like, yeah, right. And like a diesel's trying to kill you, whatever. So he goes into the diner, and he comes out of the restroom and now sees, so it's all one shot. He goes into the diner, and so he's talking to the cook and the other people there, and he's like, hey, do you have a restroom? They're like, yeah. So the camera follows him all the way to the restroom in the back. He splashes water on his face. He comes back out. Camera still follows him, no cut. Goes up to the window, looks out the window, and sees that truck parked right there. And he puts his hand on the window like, oh, shit. And there's no driver in it. So the driver is in the diner somewhere. So now he's like, oh, fuck. So it's, and it's just, he's wondering, like, which guy is it? Like, there's a bunch of guys sitting at the counter, and there's some guys sitting at tables and girls and stuff. And all he knows is that the guy wears blue jeans and brown cowboy boots. And that's all he knows. So he's everybody there. It's like a, kind of, it's like here, like in Arizona. Like, I mean, we don't all wear cowboy boots, but it's something like Texas or Arizona where it's like everybody's wearing cowboy boots. And I know, now I'm going to get mail of, we don't wear cowboy boots here in Arizona. Some people do, but it's not predominantly. But anyway, what I'm getting at is California, Texas, wherever this was, these truck drivers probably all wear cowboy boots. Not now, but in 71 they probably did. So it's a really interesting thing of him. It's a voiceover in his head of him thinking about that. And what he would do is they recorded that, and then when he did the scene, they could play it back for him so he knew how to react. And it's really good. And in this scene, he reminds me of Billy Bob Thornton. Like, just the way he's acting, the way he's kind of like freaked out and angry, and then he goes up to this one guy who he thinks is a guy, and he gets in a small scuffle with the man. And when he gets kicked out, and he goes to leave, and he sees that the truck is gone. So that was kind of cool, where all of a sudden you're like, well, fuck, it might have not. It was nobody in there. Like, now what? And then there's a school bus, and it's like stalled up the road. And so this guy asked him, hey, can you help me, push me out of the way? He goes, I think I'm going to get hung up under your bumper. No, you'll be fine. So he goes to push the guy, gets his car hung up on the bumper. And then he looks, and he sees that the truck has now turned around and came back, and the truck is on the other side of the tunnel. And another cool moment is the truck turns on its lights right then. So it's daylight. It's a daylight shot, but inside the tunnel is dark. And you see through the tunnel, you can see the truck facing us. And then all of a sudden, it starts to play the music, and David Mann's like, oh. And then all of a sudden, the lights come on, and it's like, oh, fuck. And then the truck starts going. And David quickly, like, now he's hung up on the bus. And he's got to try to get unhooked because he says the truck's coming at him. And he's also trying to yell at the kids to get out of the road, but nobody listens, and the truck is coming. David drives away, but we see the truck ends up like turning around. So you think it's going to go after him, but it just turns around, gets behind the school bus, and pushes the school bus to give it a push start. And so then you're like, oh, shit. And then another added scene of the theatrical release of the movie is while David is at the train track and the truck is behind him, and he tries to push him into the train. So he's just sitting there waiting for this train to go by. All of a sudden he looks, he gets this bump, and he looks, and it's a diesel trying to push him into the train, like slowly. And it's like, oh, shit. Then after the train goes by, the diesel just goes on by him. And David finds the diesel waiting for him on the other side of the road. Then David pulls in for gas and calls the police from a phone booth. So he pulls in. It's like this lady. She runs reptiles. She's a lady from Bosom Buddies, who ran the place where Buffy and Hildy stayed. And so he goes in there, he goes, hey, can I, put some ethyl in it? And because we used to have, I don't know if anybody remembers, you used to have regular and unleaded gas. And so, it was ethyl or it was regular or whatever. Anyway, so one of the coolest moments is David so there's this phone booth in the middle by where the snake cages are and stuff. And David's on the phone with the police, and the truck turns around and comes at him. So you can see the truck starting to come, and he's got his back to the truck, and he's trying to get a hold of somebody. He's like, this truck is chasing me, and he's trying to kill me. And it comes right at him, and it's trying to run him down, and David barely gets out of the way, and they did that all in one take. Spielberg was like, I didn't want to risk, I wasn't going to risk doing it in 2 takes because, I didn't want to kill, and Dennis Weaver really did that. So, but the guy the stunt driver of the truck had an emergency where he would pull off in after a certain flag. If he didn't see movement, he would veer off to the right or left. So it's pretty cool. And Lucille Benson is the actress I was talking about, who's the woman that owns a gas station, Reptile Traction, and she reprised this same role in the movie 1941. So John Belushi lands, gets out of his little airplane, and he walks up there, and she comes out, and she's got and he goes, fill her up, ethyl or whatever he says, and she goes, where? Because she doesn't know where to put the gas. So anyway, it's pretty funny. Then David jumps in his car, drives down the road, and hides. The truck drives by, and David waits and rests. And now there's this part where the train horn wakes him up, but it sounds like the truck horn. So you see him laying there sleeping in the car in the driver's seat. And Spielberg said that was a little bit of a cheat. And he said that he wishes that it was a brown or black train, but it was had some red in it, so you weren't really fooled by that it might have been the truck. Because the train comes by and you see some red and you're like, okay, it's not the truck. And, but, it was a train. It was a real train that went on by. So he couldn't be like, can we put a brown or black train in there? No. So David continues to drive. He laughs about that, how he got scared by that. And it was nothing. So he continues to drive. And he's coming down the road. And all of a sudden he slams on the brakes hard. And the car slides a little bit. And the camera goes you see the camera backs up a little bit, and there's the truck just waiting on the side of the road for him up ahead. And then the camera zooms into him, and he's like, oh, fuck. He doesn't say that because it's a TV movie and whatnot. And it's a very cool scene. And then he's like, fuck it, I'm going to gun it. So he guns it. But the truck pulls out. So he turns around and parks the car. Now he decides to walk up and confront the driver. The driver drives away, but pulls over to the side of the road again. He doesn't go far. You think, oh, he's going to leave. But he just pulls up a little ways and pulls over. And, it's a whole game. You've known it all along that this is a game. And I'm sorry if I'm laying everything out. I'm ruining everything for everybody or whatever. But these are the things that I really like. And I wrote these notes of really cool stuff. Anyway, but the thing of this, I remember a long time ago, I had this guy who introduced me to black and white movies. And he's about 10 years older than me. Maybe 20, but I don't think so. Maybe 15, whatever. And he was the one that first started showing me old films. And he would have these talks like we're doing now. You tell the little facts of the thing. So he would be like, oh, this is the sequel to Dracula or whatever it was, and the girl's dress, she's not wearing any underwear because it was such a tight dress that she couldn't wear any underwear. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And he's like, I have Song of the South on Laserdisc. And he would play that. And it was like, oh, my God, you have this. You can't find it because it's racist and Disney pulled it. But you have a Japanese Laserdisc of Song of the South. So it's like, wow, awesome. And then we watched, A Night to Remember with the Titanic sinking. Watch all these movies. Had me and him and other people, we'd go drinking at the bar or we'd just go to his house. And we'd watch these movies for a couple of hours. And his wife was either asleep or whatever. And so we'd sit there in the living room and watch these movies. And it was really great. My point of my whole story is, so we get in to watch Duel. He goes, it's just me. I show up and nobody else showed up. So it's him and his daughter and me. And his daughter's 12. And he's like, He's like, hey, you want to watch Duel? She's like, yeah. So while we're watching it, though, she's got that female logic of, I know sometimes females don't have logic, but mostly they do. There, I just insulted everyone. But anyway, you know what I mean. She goes, why is he not just turning around or just not going any further? Why doesn't he just stay in the diner? Like, why does he have to go home? Can he take another route? Can he do this? Can he do that? And it's like, well, yeah, but they wrote it this way. It's got to be this way for a reason,
The Burbs is the greatest movie of all time.
That was, of course, my wife who was getting ready to leave, and I went to pause it, and she goes, no, I was going to record something, and I said, okay, and she was, of course, The Burbs is the best movie of all time, which, I've been watching it lately, like I've told you guys, I used to be like, but it is pretty funny, and it's, it got a bad rap, but anyway, my point is that, he should really, that's how it was written. And so, but a lot of people might be like, hey, why doesn't he do this and do that? But I think they did it pretty good, where it's pretty understandable. And as a man, you're just like, fuck you, I'll show you, you can't get the best of me or whatever. So it's just really interesting. Anyway, then he guns it, but the truck pulls out. So he turns, I already said that. Sorry. David flags down an old couple, asks them to call the police when they get to the next station. And Spielberg, again, would later use this same couple in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They are the old couple in the helicopter. So he said he always likes that because he likes to bring, these people back or these things. So it's really cool. I really like that. The truck starts backing up towards the old couple in the car, and the old couple drive away. David runs up a hill to get away from the truck. Then he decides to get in the car and deal with this. He puts his glasses on, fastens a seatbelt, turns the car on, and floors it. The truck, of course, chases him, but can't catch him uphill. David sees what looks like a police car on the side of the road and pulls over quick. But he and we see that it is not a police car. It is a pest control car. So he keeps going. And the pest control is called Grebleep's Pest Control, which is Spielberg backwards. So I thought that was kind of cool. And the truck is getting closer. And David is again happy with himself because he is way ahead of the truck. Then his radiator hose blows and his car slows way down to like 15 or 20 miles per hour. But then he gets over the hill and can coast down it. So now he is going fast again, and the truck has to use lower gears. And that is such a cool, the way they work that. It's one of those things like, I don't know how to explain it. It's movie moments. It's whatever. It's, the pod race in Phantom Menace where, Anakin's losing, he gets shot off the side of the track. He's way up in the air. His thing is cutting. His power is only on one engine. He flips some switches, has one power go to the other motor, makes both motors go, and he takes off. And it's like, yes! And then he fucking goes past them and does all this cool shit. And that's what this is. He's going way slow, and you're like, oh, fuck, what's going to happen? And then he gets up to the top of the hill, and then he can coast down, which for one will cool his motor down. For two, he can cut the motor off and just let it coast and cool it down by not running the motor. And it's just a really cool, neat little scene. And then just one of those like, oh, cool, they figured that out. Like in the writing, it was like, now we'll do this. So then David is going too fast and crashes into the side of a mountain. So not too hard, but he dents up like the corner of his car. And the truck is coming, and he can't start the car. Finally, he gets it started and it heads to the top of the cliff. The truck is following him at full speed. He turns the car around and takes his briefcase and puts it between the accelerator and the seat, driving the car straight into the diesel. He jumps out. The truck slams into David's car and takes it over the edge along with the truck. The truck driver dies, and David Mann jumps around at the top of the cliff. Happy the truck is destroyed and the driver is dead. It is a very cool wreck, and the camera follows it all the way down. Also a very cool freeze frame at the end of David Mann sitting in the dirt with the sunset behind him. So it's really neat. And Spielberg was like, he's so happy of that cameraman followed it all the way down, and he said he loves it, but he doesn't even remember who the cameraman was. He doesn't know his name. So it's kind of sad that guy did that great thing that you remember from a movie, but you don't know who the guy is. But anyway, here are some facts. So that's a movie. Go check it out. You might have to rent it. $2.99, not bad. $3, definitely worth it. Buying it, I'm not sure how much it is to buy, but if it's $10, buy it. It's a great movie. I watch it probably once a year or something. It's really good. Spielberg's secretary read the short story of Duel by Richard Matheson in Playboy magazine and told him that it seemed right up his alley. When told about people they were thinking of casting for Duel, the producers mentioned Dennis Weaver. They said he was in Gunsmoke for years. Because Spielberg was young, they didn't know if he knew who Dennis Weaver was. They said, he was in Gunsmoke for years. He said, yes, I love Dennis Weaver. They said, what? He said, have you ever seen Touch of Evil? He is great and paranoid in that. So, again, if, for one, I did the year of my show. It's been a year. Last year, I did Touch of Evil and Out of Sight. So, he is so good in Touch of Evil. And then they gave Spielberg 10 days to direct this TV movie. He made it in 12 or 13. At like 23 years old. It's amazing. And like he said, like he goes, and this came from him. I didn't read any, I watched a documentary from his mouth. So I wrote all that down. But what was interesting is 12 or 13, he's like probably 12 or 13. And it's insane. Like making that whole movie in 12 or 13 days and being 23 and only knowing like to do TV show. But now you're out on location and you're trying to get everything done. And they used the camera car that was built for the movie Bullet. That's how they could get those low angle shots of like the diesel and stuff. So that was pretty cool. They made a large topographical map. This is also part of, I think, how he could do it better. Almost like storyboards. They made a large topographical map and then put it all over in his hotel room. He had it from the beginning of the chase all the way around, wrapped around his hotel room to the end of the chase. And where everything would take place. Here's where the phone booth is. Here's where this is. And I think that helped him out a lot, but it's really neat if you see it. I'm going to try to take a picture of my my insert of my DVDs, and I got the DVD collection, Spielberg, and I'll put it up on Instagram. And he only had 3.5 weeks to edit it. So he had that many days to make the movie, and then 3.5 weeks to edit it. And he had several different editors in different rooms. So he would go from one room to the other. What do you got? And this one guy was like, I got something a little different, and played it for him. And he had taken all the shots from different scenes and put it into one so it looked like one big long chase, and it made it better. And I think that's what they ended up using. He loved, and this is where I talked about, he loved the shot of the truck twisting and falling to the bottom of the cliff and the way that it is gone in a cloud of dust and then it emerges again. So it's really cool. Like it's all dusty and you're like, oh, then all of a sudden the big tanker part of it starts coming out of the dust. It's really cool. So he did the same thing with Jaws. When the shark blows up, it is all bloody, and then you see a bit of the shark pieces emerge. Like it's all murky, and then you see like some of the shark come out of the murk, and that's where he got that idea. And you can see Spielberg in the glass of the phone booth when Dennis Weaver enters to make a phone call. So it's kind of funny. He's like, they didn't have dailies. They were just filming, sending the stuff off. So it was like, okay, we can't watch this. Hopefully we got it. And they'd send it. So he said, I would have caught that had I been able to watch it, but I didn't. And there I am right in the reflection of the phone booth. So kind of cool. So here's some Richard Matheson notes. JFK assassination had just happened, and he and a friend were going to play golf, but then after the news decided not to. They left the golf course, and while driving home, a truck was following them, like a diesel truck, was following them and almost ran them off the road. He thought that would make a good story. He grabbed an envelope in his friend's car and wrote some things down. And in the novelette, he had the driver's name on the side of the door, and it was Keller. And he thought, oh, Keller Killer, like, oh, I'm being so clever. But he's like, eh. And he drove from his house to Ventura to see the detail before writing the novelette. So he wanted to be able to write all the stuff down that you might run into. And after Duel, he said that he never wrote again. So kind of sad because he wrote some good stuff. But he said he never noticed it until somebody brought it up to him. But his stories are always one man fighting something. And it's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. So that is that. And now we are on to a Clockwork Orange from, of course, 1971. The plot, I wrote this bigger plot down because this more explained it a little better. Protagonist Alex DeLarge is an ultra-violent youth in futuristic Britain. As with all luck, his eventually runs out, and he's arrested and convicted of murder and rape. While in prison, Alex learns of an experimental program in which convicts are programmed to detest violence. If he goes through the program, his sentence will be reduced, and he will be back on the streets sooner than expected. But Alex's ordeals are far from over once he hits the mean streets of Britain that he had a hand in creating. Stars Malcolm McDowell as Alex DeLarge. Again, I'm not going to go into the other names. Nobody will know. The real Sin East will, but I didn't want to bore people with that. Written by Stanley Kubrick from the novel by Anthony Burgess and directed by Stanley Kubrick. Now, I'm going to also share this picture. Went to my mom's wedding wearing a bowler hat and bondage pants. If you don't know what bondage pants are, like the Rancid, is it Rancid? Anyway, that band. I had a pair of red and black checker bondage pants, and they have zippers and buckles all over them. And then I'd wear some black T-shirt or whatever, something. And then I had this bowler hat, and I would wear that. And because I saw Clockwork Orange back then, and at one point I even had a cane with a sword in it. It had kind of a long sword that you would just kind of unscrew and pull the sword out with the handle. Probably highly illegal, but anyway, I had it. And it's really interesting that the way this movie is, I've never had this with movies. I hear this with books. In books, it's oh wow, I read the book at this time in my life and I got this out of it. I heard Oprah Winfrey say this once. Toni Morrison book she read when she was younger, and she got this one thing out of it. She read it when she was older, and she said now she understood the adult and was like, oh wow, that's totally different. But with the movies, it's usually always, I get that same feeling. I love that movie, blah, blah, blah. But this was back when I used to watch this movie, and I think a lot of people, and some people may be this way, but I don't know if it's me getting older or what it is. This might have been better to have a person on the show to discuss this with, but I didn't have time at the time, so we're doing the show by myself, so here it is. But I used to identify, Alex is cool, that's awesome, oh yeah, he, fuck the man, he beat up that guy, he was singing in the rain, that was cool, that was a cool moment, I like that, I like this, that slow motion thing by the water, oh, that's neat, oh, he's, that, that cop spit on him, and he hates them, and I wish he wasn't in prison, poor thing, blah, 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 right? But then, I watch it this time with my 47-year-old eyes before I turned 48, and was at the time I was feeling a little kind of not nauseous, but a little sick. And not that this made me sick, but just, I don't know. I don't think it was just because I was feeling a little sick, but I just know that I was like, oh wow, this is not, I'm going to go through the movie, but this is not what I used to be like, oh, this is the best. I knew that it was kind of a long, not, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours and 10. That it's not a movie that you're going to watch a lot over and over again, but it is a classic, and not that it needs to be watched, but you can get some stuff out of it. It's like an art piece. Like I said before, Kubrick's stuff, it's like an art piece, except for his other stuff. His older stuff, like The Killer, is really great. The Killers, I always forget. Anyway, Joe Merle knows what I'm talking about. So, all red title at the start with a touch of blue, that was awesome. Just the music starts with just this big red, and then it says A Clockwork Orange. And then it's Blue, directed by Stanley Kubrick. The Droogs drinking Milk Plus. It's a cool shot. Cool coffee tables. All the tables are like women. You know, it's of course exploiting women totally in this movie is like horrible. On that, before I get to this, I found this podcast. Clever idea. Cleverer than mine, because mine is everybody's doing what I do. Is these two girls do guy films. And so it's Guy Films by Lady. I'll get to you guys. I'll tell you what the name of it is. But they were told to watch this by their guy friends. And then they watched it and they were like, oh my God, like they hated it. And they, don't want to watch it. And they were disturbed by it and all this stuff. But kind of cool because that's what it should do is kind of, good art should do something to you. Should stir something in you. So then beating that homeless man, I remember seeing that and like, oh my God, they just beat up this homeless guy like for no reason, man. They just don't care. They don't give a shit. Yeah. Such great visuals and mise-en-scene. So in film class, I tried to explain this to my friend Sergio. Mise-en-scene is like the scene, like the shot, like a shot of like two people off to the side. Like, let's say I'm looking at my Reservoir Dogs poster, like them walking along the side of the wall. Like that's a cool shot. Like, the opening of Hateful Eight with that big cross and then, all that stuff. Anyway. And then such great words like gutty wutz, like my gutty wutz. And, the house invasion is still frightening. And this is where I think before I was like, wow, that's really Singing in the Rain. Like he's beating these people up. Oh, it's kind of funny and whatever. And I get that it's a black comedy. I get that. But this house invasion I was like, oh my God, like it's pretty frightening. And then Malcolm McDowell is very creepy, of course. And he has eyes on the cuffs of his shirt, which is weird. I never noticed that before. And I was like, what the fuck? And the other guys have things on their cuffs too. But he such great colors and visuals in the house too, like in his house where he lives. Just like really cool. The truant officer or parole officer drinking the denture water and not realizing it. It's like, ugh, like he's drinking it and you're going, oh my God, he's drinking denture water. And then all of a sudden he realizes it and he like spits it out and it's funny. And the time-lapse sex scene is great. Like nobody's doing this kind of stuff. And it took 26 minutes to film that whole scene because it was time-lapse. So it took longer, of course. But it's funny. Like he has sex with one girl and then the other girl gets naked. Then that girl gets dressed and then he goes, talks to that girl, gets her out of her outfit, starts having sex with her. And the other one gets dressed. Same thing. It's just funny. And then the attack by the water is again cool. But now he's in charge. And the house with the cats, like it looks cool, like it's cool looking. And I watch a video of where they went to all these old places that still exist. And it's, I always love that. It's like, that's cool to be like, I'm right here. This is where that was filmed. And the effect when he kills the cat lady with the dick statue is a weird thing. It's like boing, but like he hits her in the mouth and then it shows a painting of a mouth and it zooms in and out and zooms in and out real quick and goes doing, 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 like almost comedic. But even the fight in the beginning there when they, right after they beat up the homeless guy and then they go to that like auditorium place and they get in a fight with that other gang that's trying to rape that girl. And even that fight is like just like almost hilarity. Like they're running and kicking a guy and they're doing all this stuff. So it's kind of funny in that way of like this violence is like over the top funny, but it's also like just, strange and, the whole, just everything. Then slow motion hitting him with the bottle of milk when he comes out of the cat lady's place. And he's like, we got to go. And he hits him with the milk and the milk shatters. It's just that shot is just slow motion, like really cool looking with the milk. Him grabbing the cop's dick and not letting go. Like that would be like, holy like this guy's not letting go. He's a criminal. He doesn't give a fuck. Like we need to, and they just beat him until he fucking releases. And then they say violence makes violence, which I believe is totally true. I do not believe video games make you do it. I'll get to that later. I don't believe video games or movies make you violent. I think maybe weak-minded people might think that or something, which I can get. But anyway, we'll get to that also in a little bit. Shit gets real when he finds out the woman died, and thinking the advisor would help and believe him, he spits in Alex's face. So that parole officer or truant officer, whatever he is, he hates Alex. He knows Alex has always been lying, and he's glad that Alex finally fucked up and got arrested and is going to prison. And when they give him his number, 655-321, they say, remember this? And he's like sitting there like looking up, like trying to remember it. And they say it so fast where I was even like, what was that number? And I had to write it down. The whole processing scene is great. Like they're like, put that down again, slowly. So he has to reach and stand on that side of the line. He has to lean over and pick it up slowly and put it back down. And it's like, and in this, of course, he's only supposed to be 15. He was like 26 or 27 at the time, but he's supposed to be 15 years old. And so when you look at it that way, if they had a 15-year-old doing all this, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like, it'd be like the movie Kids or something. It'd still be crazy. And then reading the Bible, but imagining himself as a Roman, and then fantasizing about women feeding him grapes. Like, I thought that was hilarious because he's reading the Bible, and the preacher thinks, or whatever you call it, I'm not religious, whatever, is reading him is thinking that he's full on religious and he's reading the Bible now and he's a good person. But in reality, he's just doing that to try to fit in, to do what he has to, make people believe all of his bullshit like he's always been. And when he's reading the Bible, all he's thinking about is like a movie and him whipping Jesus. Like, that's what he thinks. And it's just that kind of stuff is like just crazy. Like, and I didn't read the book, but I'm sure that was kind of like the book. And is this movie saying that religion doesn't work is what I was wondering. I don't think so, but a part of me was thinking maybe. But again, that's what makes you good art, makes you think. They play the graduation song when the officials come and check his cell, and the Minister of the Interior sees his Beethoven picture. And he is given shot 114. I don't know if that means anything deeper, but it's like he was the 114th person to get this. Like that's crazy. It's just interesting. And so, because they act like maybe it's like not many, but he's 114. And they're like, we're just going to show you some films. And he's like, oh, cool, I like films. Like, he thinks it's, all fun. And then I had those things that they hold your eyes open. I remember I had those when I had LASIK surgery, and it was like, oh my God, like they had to like block it open, and then cut my eye back and fold it back and hit it with a red laser and then fold it back. But they had to put those in there so you don't blink. It was like, oh, weird. Felt real weird, but not as fucked up as I thought it would be, but it was all right. But anyway, those are not comfortable. And then Nazis marching to Beethoven, war and all, and that's his favorite. And it's almost sad, but then you're like, no, this guy is a bad guy. Like, fuck that. But it is interesting where he loved Mozart. Like, if you could do that and teach him to hate violence, that's fine. But now you put a little bit of something. You're showing me this, I'm too violent. You're showing me Raiders of the Lost Ark and the face melting scene, and all of a sudden I can't watch Raiders of the Lost Ark now because, now I'm, it's my favorite, but now I feel nauseous when I try to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's very interesting. And taking away his choice. And so, it's supposed to be a good thing where, okay, now just whenever you have a violent tendency or a rape tendency or whatever, not that rape isn't violence, but now all of a sudden you're going to be sick. And he's like, okay, but doesn't realize how that does affect him. And the government doesn't realize that. And his family is afraid of him. Like, they don't want to, they almost have that other guy tell him, like, no, your parents hate you. Like, you were mean to them. You don't give a shit. Like, get out of here. I'm in the room now. And you're sad for him, but he chose that life. Like, you're like, no, you chose that. Like, fuck you. And then he's contemplating suicide, and the same hobo he beat up in the beginning asks for money, and he gives it to him. Then all the homeless people beat him up because then he remembers him, and he's like, oh, you're that fucking guy. And two of his droogs, who are now cops, cuff him and take him into the woods, beat him, and almost kill him by putting his face in a water trough. And he held his breath for a long time under there. I remember when I was first watching this time, I was thinking, did he have like an oxygen thing underneath there? But no, knowing Kubrick, it was just like, hold your breath as long as you can. And he, I'll get to that in a minute on the facts. But the main man at the house does not recognize him, but gives him a bath, but then hears him singing in the rain. And then when he's like freaking out, and you see that same shot, that cool shot that you get from The Shining of down below showing up on his face, just like when he showed Jack pounding on the freezer door. And you're just like, oh my God, like, oh shit. Like, now he remembers. And David Prowse, of course, is Julian, the manservant. Anybody who doesn't know, David Prowse was the original body actor of Darth Vader. And then the voice was that guy, the Simba guy, the Lion King guy that can't think of right now. I know you're all yelling at me, but I'm sorry. And so David Prowse is in there, and he's like big and muscular. And so then they're all sitting around with these two friends that have showed up, and the writers made him food, and he's sitting there kind of giving an interview with this girl, and he's eating, and it's quiet, and you're waiting for something to happen. Then the writer yells, "Food, all right?" And you're like, what the fuck? Holy shit. Then all of a sudden he passes out into his spaghetti, like just face down. And it's funny, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, what are they going to do to him next? Like, I wonder. And he wakes up, and they're playing Ludwig van Beethoven and have him locked in a room upstairs. And he can't stand it and jumps to his death, but does not die. His legs, his arm, and his head are in a cast. And his parents apologize. Psychiatrist shows up and shows him slides and asks him to fill in the thought bubbles. And he is back to the way he was. You see that in the thought bubbles, he's kind of childish. He's saying childish things. I'm thinking right there that he's back, but it's not really violent things that he's saying. But now he's going to have a good job and salary from what the minister tells him. And then at the end he says, I was cured, all right. And then you see, I thought it was him envisioning sex, but it might have been him having sex with somebody. And of course, those women that I told you about on the podcast were like, that looked forced. And I was like, no, it looked like she was just having all kinds of weird fun. But what's interesting with that whole thing was that he even talks about to the psychiatrist, like, I had this, I felt like people were in my head stirring things up. And it's like that was a government going in there and reversing what they did or whatever. So it's really interesting. And facts about this movie are Kubrick didn't understand the language at first when he was first told about the book while making Dr. Strangelove. So he was like, no, I don't want to do that, because the book has a glossary. So you read these weird words like Gulliver, and then you got to understand what it means, and then figure it out. The movie does it good where you understand what they mean. Mick Jagger and the rest of the Stones were almost Alex and his droogs, so that would have been kind of weird and neat. Kubrick would take anyone's ideas, so even like a security guard or somebody, just the doorman, he was like, oh, he had a good idea about whatever, and the woman's like, the doorman? And he's like, yeah, that guy. It's like, wow. But that's cool. He wasn't like, no, this is my vision. Like, it was like, okay. The real doctor, there's a real doctor putting drops in Malcolm McDowell's eyes, which you might have already known. That's one of the big facts. Malcolm tried to pull his arms out of the straitjacket for that scene when he has his eyes propped open, and he one of the clips scratched his eyeball. And that was his fault because, he was tied down, but he was frustrated with how many takes they were doing. And when he moved, the little eye clip scratched his eye. And 27 takes of being dunked in the water trough. Kubrick had put meat extract in it, so it looked muddy. And Malcolm McDowell's like, that thing stinks and it's gross and I never want to do that again. So 27 takes. I couldn't even imagine how many takes of that guy spitting in his face, how many takes of, the rapes, all that different stuff. Like, it's crazy. The home invasion was a little flat, then Kubrick asked Malcolm McDowell if he knows any songs. He sang Singing in the Rain. Kubrick loved it and bought the rights for the song. Later on in life, Malcolm McDowell ran into Gene Kelly at a party and tried to talk to him, and Gene Kelly just turned around and walked away because he was upset at how his song was used in this movie. Did not like it at all. And an actual rape of a Dutch woman while the offenders sang Singing in the Rain happened after this movie. And there were things like that. There were people saying that it was the violence of the movie that made people do it. And here's a thing that Hitchcock said about that kind of incident. Not about A Clockwork Orange, but about people doing violence from things that they see. Someone at a lecture once informed Hitchcock of a murder that happened because that person saw Psycho. Hitchcock asked, did they also drink a glass of milk before the murder? Meaning, how do you know the movie made him do it? Could have been the milk. So, it's I thought that was kind of funny. Kubrick received a threatening letter to him and his family, so he withdrew the film from the UK for 28 years. Because of all the backlash and all that, he was just like, fuck it, I'm pulling it. Plus, when people are like, I'm going to fucking do that to your family, break into your house, I'd be like, okay, fuck it. I'm closing this bitch down. So it wasn't released until after he died, from what I heard. So that was really interesting. And that's the show. And what I found about this, when the author Burgess wrote this book, he said his whole point was religion and free will, and that free will is the way to go. Like, does violence beget violence? Yeah, maybe, probably. Does the, can you be corrected in prison? Can you come out a better person? Some people are just fucked up. As I probably said on this show before, a guy that worked for us used to be was a sheriff in Mateo County, and over there where, San Quentin and all that is. And he said that, he met Manson. Manson was fine. He's not a mean, he didn't get weird vibes from whatever. He said he used to macrame and stuff. It was kind of funny. But the creepiest person that he ever met was Richard Ramirez. And he said that he got chills when he was in the same room with that guy. When he looked at him, just the hair on the back of his neck stood up like it was a bad dude. Like somebody like that you cannot correct. He's always going to be a bad dude. There are people, Ted Bundy, always a bad dude. Some people, maybe you can correct them if they're light criminals. If they're big-time rapists and murderers, probably can't correct that. So the point of this movie that I got, and I'll try to shorten this up kind of, is that, yes, free will is the way to go. That this art piece made me feel different this time, where I was like, that's a really good movie. And I was picking up stuff that you don't pick up usually, like that whole thing of them showing him off to the press or whatever, was like they had a hired comedian, they had this hired nude actress girl that bowed at the end, like it was weird. But the whole free will, like, yes, free will, if you take that away, then you have nothing. So, I totally agree with that. And that was how they tied that in there. Like he loved Ludwig van Beethoven, but when they mixed that up with that, then he was tortured. And so he never got cured and all that good stuff. And Duel is a great movie. And out of these two, of course, Duel, I hold up there better than A Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange is good. Is it my top 5 favorite Kubricks? I don't think so. But I got to go through Kubrick's because I like, 2001, of course, is the best. Just beautiful. It's great. Philosophical, metaphysical, like all this weird shit going on. Duel is great. Is that my favorite Spielberg movie? No. What's my favorite Spielberg movie? Raiders of the Lost Ark, Minority Report, War of the Worlds, Color Purple, Alive. Now I'm drawing a blank. What was that movie? And it was James Earl Jones, by the way, in Lion King and Darth Vader's voice. Okay, I had to do a little bit of cheating. I had to try to... What always happens whenever you start to look something up, it hits you. Started to look up Spielberg, clicked on filmography, clicked on director, and it hit me. It's Always. Always is a great movie. Jaws, of course, everybody's like, you fucking forgot Jaws and Close Encounters. Those are the top. So, Kubrick, yes. I haven't seen Barry Lyndon. I don't think I've seen all of Spartacus. But anyway, Full Metal Jacket, great. You know, all that. Anyway, Eyes Wide Shut, not so good. Okay then. So that's the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to leave you with another 1971 trailer for a thing called Females for Hire, which I tried to look for to see if I could find it on Amazon Prime, but I cannot. So I'm going to leave you with that and the outro music. So I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, I am Phillip, and I will talk to you sometime then.
What you see is what you get with Females for Hire. And it's a lot more than you have ever seen. Yes, Females for Hire makes the happy hooker look like Mother Goose. It's all here, all of it, with everything left in and nothing left out. The story of the jungle they call the street and the girls who have become the most dangerous game on earth. Here is the marketplace, the buyers and the sellers, the conners and the conned, the dream and the nightmare. Females for Hire. They guarantee you a good time. The contract doesn't say you'll come out alive. You're playing with fire. With Females for Hire. From Independent International, rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.